What's up? Alright, man. I'm glad somebody's in here. I know it's late as fuck. Well, I guess that's a matter of location. But, what's going on, Piranha? How you doing, man? Hey, Ari! Hey! Alright, fellas. So, we're gonna go over some things that I've been looking into. Ari, you've been looking into some of this stuff too, but I've kind of been doing my own thing a little bit recently. But okay, so alright, I don't know, I'm sure you guys did, but the post I had yesterday, the video post where I was saying we're going to be talking about Title 31 of the United States Code, Section 1321, and then we'll be talking specifically. Those are trusts. All right, let me pull it up right here. Title 31 is money and finance. All right, and then let's see, 1321. So that would be appropriations and then trust funds and refunds. All right, so clearly we're going to be focused on the trust funds part, which is section 1321. Okay. Now, after that it is a list of, I'll do this number right here. It is a list of trust funds after that, all right? So it has A, which is the following are classified as trust funds, and then it's 1 through a bunch. I don't know. 1 through 91, okay? 1 through 91, all right? But there are 3 that are worthy of immediate attention, all right? The first one is the second trust fund, which is Philippines Special Trust or Special Fund, and then in parentheses Internal Revenue with lowercase I, lowercase f, and then 61 or 62, which is Puerto Rico Special Fund, and then again parentheses Internal Revenue, uppercase I, uppercase R. So we have 2 Internal Revenue trust funds. One's in the Philippines, one is in one is in Puerto Rico. I'm pretty sure the one in Puerto Rico is the one that's most relevant. Anyway, this is worth pointing out because obviously because of the location of the trust funds, which are not in the several 50 states, but are in the territories of the federal United States. All right, so not the several 50 states, but the federal United States. Okay. If you guys have been paying attention to what Ari and I have been doing as far as the Internal Revenue goes, exactly, federal territories, exactly. That is the focal point for all of this right here. And like I was saying, if you guys have been keeping up with what Ari and I have been talking about as far as the income tax goes and the Internal Revenue Service, all right, it is all wholly, like Ari is saying, federal territories, okay? It does not apply to the 50 sovereign states. It does not apply to state citizens in most respects. It does, however, apply to state citizens if they're working for a federal corporation. All right. Now, through this lens of internal revenue and federal territories, we're going to be talking about domestic and foreign. Domestic would be the federal United States, the federal territories, and then foreign would be the 50 states or other sovereign countries. Okay. So when I'm going to be saying domestic and foreign, that is what you need to be thinking, all right? Just substitute domestic with federal, and then foreign with, the 50 states, one of the several states, all right? Well, it does. It certainly applies to people who are of the District of Columbia, but it also applies to uh, territories of the United States. Okay, the federal United States and the District of Columbia are two separate entities. All right. If you actually read the Organic Act of February 21st, 1871, you'll see that it's pretty obvious those are two separate entities because in the first section, uh, federal employees, yeah, but not strictly. All right, because remember, Chapter 24 of the Internal Revenue Service, or of the Tax Code, Chapter 24 of the Tax Code, is just it is all about federal employees and federal employers. Okay, but remember, Section 3401C is the definition for employee, which is where we connect the dots for it being a federal employee. Because as far as corporation and employer goes, they do not make that distinction. But in 3401C is where they say an employee is a federal employee. But the first part of that section says, for the purposes of this chapter. Okay? So the next time you see employee, if you're not in Chapter 24, then it's going to be a different definition. All right? And then the definition for employee, as far as the entire title goes, unless said otherwise, it is like an insurance salesman. Okay? But then again, it says, unless stated otherwise, and then Chapter 24 would be an example of where it states otherwise. Okay? And then back to what I was saying with the Organic Act in the District of Columbia, it is Chapter 1, or Section 1 of the Organic Act is where it obviously is where first establishes the District of Columbia, which is completely constitutional. All right, because remember, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 is where it says that there should be a 10-mile square that should be the seat of the federal government. Okay? Not that that is the federal government, but that's the seat of it. Okay? So what I'm getting at here is that when you read Section 1, it says that the laws of the District of Columbia, they use not inconsistent. All right, so that's a double negative. It's consistent with, all right, but they say not inconsistent, and then in the other two sections where they bring this up, they use consistent. All right, so but it says the laws of the District of Columbia and the legislation and this act, the Organic Act, are to be not inconsistent with the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Okay? So since they're referencing the laws of the United States, that implies that the United States is already an established entity and therefore is not just now being incorporated with this act. Okay? If you people need to start reading these laws, all right? Like I know where a lot of the information with the Organic Act is coming from, and it's coming from mainly that 1 hour video, and then there's a couple others on YouTube talking about the Organic Act, and that's just not entirely right. These people clearly did not read the act, okay? And you can know this because they don't ever reference the Municipal Act of 1878. Okay, they just stop right there at the Organic Act of 1871. They're like, oh, check it out, look, the District of Columbia, it's de facto, it's a municipal corporation, which it is, but there's a lot more to it than that, all right? It's a municipal body corporate, all right? But they don't ever talk about the Municipal Act of 1878, which is Part 2 of the Organic Act of 1871. Okay, these people need to read these laws, and if you're going to watch these people for influence, if you're going to check out these people, what up, Johnny? If you're going to check these people for if you're going to use them as references, as influence, or any of that, all right, you need to double check what they're talking about. If they're talking about the Organic Act of 1871, go read the act, all right? It's not terribly long. It's like 12 pages, okay? And it's very insightful because in that act, they do say that the District of Columbia is a municipal corporation, Well, it's a municipal corporate, or it's a body. It's a body corporate for municipal purposes. All right, and all those are definitions in a Black's Law dictionary. The newer ones, maybe, probably not. Well, yeah, probably. The older ones, certainly. But the point here is that when you read the act, you'll learn a lot more, and you'll definitely avoid the deception. Because it's the actual act. It's the actual act. Okay, you can't... That's... It's not a conspiracy, all right? Because it's a published act, okay? So you can go ahead, and you got to remember controlled opposition. Okay, especially with stuff like this, you need to remember controlled opposition. Hey, doll, what's going on, boo? Glad you're here. Glad everyone's here. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad you're all paying attention. Hopefully we can clear the air on some of this stuff. I've been meaning to go over it for a while now, but the stars have not aligned until now. They have now. But anyway, so back at it, okay? And then there are two other acts in that, in the Organic Act that reference the Constitution, and it references the laws of the United States. All right? So clearly the District of Columbia and the United States are two separate entities. All right? The United States Federal Corporation. All right? The federal government. Okay? It being a federal corporation, yeah, you have that one statute, okay, that one definition and that one title out of 50 titles, okay, people, there are 50 titles, and the only one that gets tossed around is that one, all right, and we'll get onto that here in a little bit, but I'm going to try to not lose my train of thought. So, since the Organic Act is references the Constitution and the laws of the United States, we can then conclude that they are two separate entities. Okay, the federal government is the federal government, and then the District of Columbia is the District of Columbia. Okay, the District of Columbia is the seat of the federal government. Okay, for jurisdictional purposes. All right, the federal government cannot be in one of the 50 sovereign states. Okay, there's some constitutional issues with that right now. I bet I could pull them up here in a jiffy, because I wrote these down and I put them in a draft for when Ari and I did the zip code. Yeah, here we go. Fuck. Sorry, I got a couple different tabs open with some shit going on. But anyway, there's constitutional issues with that, which is why that clause 17 from Section 8, Article 1, was put in there. All right, because the 50 sovereign states are their own countries, they're their own nations. All right, and then the federal government is to be subsidiary to them, and it is also supposed to be its own entity. Okay, which is why it needs to have its own ground. All right, literally and figuratively. Let's see, zip code. Yeah, okay, right here. Article 4, Section 3, Clause 1. All right? No new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state. Okay? So, that would be the reasoning behind having to establish the District of Columbia. All right, so back to the Internal Revenue Service and it being trust fund number 62. What up, Peace? How you doing? You got here just in the nick of time. We're just getting down to the meat, I guess. So anyway, so this is clearly a pretty big issue, the fact that it is in Puerto Rico, okay? It is housed in Puerto Rico, and then if you were to look at any of the definitions for United States and or the District of Columbia in the tax code, that's where you'll see, like for United States, it'll be the District of Columbia, Guam, Philippines, Puerto Rico, and the like. And then insular possessions and territories. Okay? And then, so again, you won't ever see it being referenced, the United States being referenced as the several 50 states. And if you do see that, it'll be strictly, it'll say geographically, in a geographical sense. Okay? So I just thought I'd chime in there. And then when we go over to Title 31, we're already in Title 31. But if we stay in Title 31 and we go to Chapter 3, which is, let's see what. Alright, yeah. Alright, Subtitle 1, Chapter 3, Department of the Treasury, Organization. And then it lists every organization that is in the Department of the Treasury, and the Internal Revenue Service is not found in there, or any variation thereof. So it's clearly its own entity, and its own entity, its own jurisdiction. But remember, all right, with the Bruce-Shaber case, the Bruce-Shaber case was after the 16th Amendment, all right? It was definitely after the Pollock case. Yeah, I think it was the Bruce-Shaber case. What do you mean all these documents? I mean, I'm not really referencing any documents. I've been referencing laws, which are all in the they're all in the drive. But I'll show you where I'm getting some of this other stuff, and I'll add it to the drive. I haven't added any of this because it's been a while since I looked at it. But and I'll make a video showing where it all is. So just stay tuned for all that, and then you'll be able to read at your leisure and whatnot. Yes, in my bio, exactly. That's where you'll find everything. All right, everything. Okay, so let's move on. Actually, real quick, I want to touch back on the Municipal Act. All right, nowhere in that act, okay, all 12 pages of it, nowhere in that act does it ever talk about establishing the United States of America. All right, we went over that. More importantly, nowhere does it talk about. Nowhere. Wait. Yeah. That link is to a Google Drive with a shit ton of documents on there. Several folders, and then a lot of loose docs. The loose docs are kind of all over the place. They're largely templates and just legal research. And then the files will have, obviously, more organized material, because there'll be, everything for this and then everything for that. And yeah, no, everything in there is pretty well organized. But, alright, so with the Municipal, no, not the Municipal Act, the Organic Act. Both of these acts, by the way, are in there. They're in the, they're in the loose docs, so don't click on any of the folders. Just click on the law folder, then scroll down. Under M you'll find the Municipal Act of 1878, and then scroll down farther than that, you'll find the Organic Act of 1871. You're welcome. I'm glad you're actually reading from it. I don't know why, but I get this feeling that people aren't reading from it. It's probably because of the lack of interaction on my posts, but I also post about stuff that isn't necessarily in there yet, or if it is, I mean, like, it's a big doc, so it's not like people just like read all that shit because they have other things going on. But anyway, nowhere in the Act, the Organic Act or the Municipal Act, neither one of these acts, nowhere does it talk about establishing or ordaining or even incorporating a new constitution. All right, so If you see somebody talking about the Constitution of 1871, kindly be like, what the fuck are you talking about? There is not one. Okay? There's a troll who loves posting generic bullshit on a lot of my posts. She's fairly intelligent, I guess. She does reiterate herself a whole lot, and she doesn't seem to have a point most of the time. But a lot of the stuff she says is right. It's when she starts talking about all the different constitutions is where I'm like, I don't really think you're all the way there. Because she references the Organic Act of 1871, and she references this fictitious Constitution of 1871, which doesn't exist. But I've successfully lost my train of thought. So I'll just kind of pick up with what I have here on the board. The Bruce case. All right, so with the Bruce case, that is where it states that because Bruce wrote in his suit that he was a citizen of, I think he said it is. What do you mean by that? It's done with after public policy law. Sorry. He states that he is a citizen of New York instead of a United States citizen. So because of this, they being the Treasury released Treasury Directive 2313, which states that even though you might be an alien entity, okay, so even though you might be a citizen of one of the states, even though you might be a state citizen, if you're working for a federal corporation, which would be probably any corporation, considering how they're all registered to the federal government, then you still owe the income tax. So the Bruce case is pretty important to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about jurisdiction and federal employees, federal employers, and federal benefits, kind of basically just at all, because you might have done everything right, you might have gotten your status to where you're a state citizen, and you're doing the deal correctly, but if you're still working for basically any company, then you're still going to be considered, you might be an alien as far as federal jurisdiction goes. So you might be outside of their jurisdiction, but if you're working for a federal corporation, then you're going to be within their federal jurisdiction again. Okay? And so you got to keep that in mind. But back to the definition for the United States. People like throwing around that Title 28 definition, but no one is really talking about the definitions in the tax code. I mean, everyone likes talking about that employee definition, but like I said, it starts out by saying for the purposes of this chapter. That chapter being chapter 24. Chapter 24 being the chapter for federal employees. So of course employee is going to be referencing a federal employee. All right, go to the other chapters. Go to chapters 1 and 2 where it's not talking about federal employees. All right, you're going to find a different definition. Go to the end of the title in section 7701. Okay, and go look for employee again. And like I said, it is not a federal employee. It is an insurance salesman, unless otherwise stated. Okay. But when we're talking about definitions for the United States, we're not dead entities. We're not dead entities. It's the lost at sea doctrine in admiralty law. Okay, where it's I guess dead entities. I don't really jive with that, just because it's like that standard. It's like part of that echo chamber of largely disinformation that you find online. And that's why you need to actually read the laws, is because these nefarious entities are not idiots. They understand that people are going to eventually figure this stuff out. So if they can create a diversion like this bullshit that is going on with the birth certificate, if they can create a diversion, uh, you know, that it's enough. It's because you need the truth to sell the lie. So if there's enough truth in there to get people to be like, oh, finally, I'm digging, I'm getting down to the bottom of it. No, not really. It's controlled opposition, and you know, it is pretty easy to fall for that stuff. But all right, then you're gonna need to do say proof of life. All right, it's a notice, or I think it's a notice for proof of life. And then stamp the sole of your feet, because remember on the birth certificate they take the sole of your foot. All right, so you're going to need to do that same thing now on your proof of life document. Okay, but you when you're learning about the law, especially the law, to be aware. Learn about the law is the easiest place to find controlled opposition, disinformation, or just wrong information. It's how often do they cite the law? How often do they reference the law? What do they know about case law? How much do they reference case law? Okay, that's the main thing. And that birth certificate meme that likes to float around the echo chambers of Instagram. If you go to that article where it arrives and you read it, there's like 2 laws mentioned, and they're acts. All right, so there's no parentheses codified into law or codified into positive law. Pursuant this title and section. There's none of that. It's just, oh, well, there's the Social Security Act, and then there's the Vital Statistics Act, and that's it. And everything you read that is in regards to the law needs to be littered with statutes and cases and legal doctrine, and it needs to be founded in law. It can't just sound pretty. And then so back to these definitions. The only time you'll see the several 50 states mentioned is in a geographical sense, because under the Buck Act of 1940 is when the well, at least that's the only thing that I've heard about the Buck Act. But there's some talk of the of income there in federal territories, and that's under Title IV, sections like 1101 to something beyond that. Check out the Buck Act in 1940. There's some good stuff in there. It's in the drive, and that's again talking about federal territories, and that's where the zip code comes into play. But it's just a part of it. It's not the entirety of it. And you need to understand that the word include means not the general colloquial sense plus the following. It's strictly the following. Okay. There's Treasury Directive 28. Fuck. Hold on. I think it's 2983, but let me just be certain here. It's 9. Oh my god, where the fuck is jurisdiction at? Sorry, I know dead air is pretty bad for podcasting, but it was getting late and I was like, shit, I am just not as ready as I had thought. So, alright, so chapter 6. And I'll show you what book I'm using here in a sec. Because there's a lot of good stuff in here. But there's also a lot of stuff that you need to just kind of keep an eye out for, because there is no one-stop shop. Everything's got its 2 cents to put in, but 2 cents doesn't get you very far. 3980. Holy shit, that took longer than it needed to. Alright, Treasury decision, and these were decisions, not directives, okay? We're discussing the Internal Revenue Service and tax law for right now. We were just talking about the Municipal Act of 1870. No, the Organic Act of 1871, and then its counterpart, its update, the Municipal Act of 1878. So we're just kind of talking about the District of Columbia and the Internal Revenue, because Title 31 of the United States Code, Section 1321, which is trust funds. The second and 62nd trust fund are both internal revenue. One is stationed in the Philippines. The other one is stationed in Puerto Rico. The one in Philippines is the second trust fund. It's the Philippine Special Fund, and it is lowercase I, lowercase r. The 62nd is Puerto Rico Special Fund, uppercase I, uppercase R. Yes, 3980, Treasury Decision, number 3980, which says, includes, means to comprise as a member, to confine, to comprise as the whole apart, okay? So it is to confine, and every time in the tax code, Title 26, you will see that it says the United States includes, which means the United States is strictly the following, which would be the District of Columbia, Insular Territories, Puerto Rico, Philippines, Guam. I saw Samoa up there, and the other ones. And that is from, oh God, of course. Get out of here. As from this book, Goodbye April 15th by Boston Tea Party. Love to play on words there. Anyway, get that book when you can, if you want. It is out of print and hard to come by, but it does pop up from here and there. It does have largely a lot of really good information, but they also play that Section 3401C bit where, oh, check it out, employee means federal employee. Yeah. I mean, like, you know what we're talking about here. It's so some of them get omitted. You know, they're just territories. You know, who really cares? And that's how you'll always see it. And this additional information in Title 31, I think, is very, very crucial to include, and it gets left out, to my current understanding, all the time. Yes, that is the title. Goodbye, April 15th. That is the title, by Boston Letter T Party. But it gets left out a lot, and there's an excellent article by William Cooper that goes over this entire thing. Alright, and I just want to show you kind of like how I find some of this stuff, okay? Because I have found more gems than I would have ever thought to find in the comment section of just looking for stuff. Alright, so let's pull up, so for example, where I found this trust fund number 62 article by William Cooper. It's very long, and it is one of those that is riddled in law, so it's very hard to call it bullshit. I found that by going to Amazon Books and trying to find The Great Income Tax Hoax by the half-shill, what's his name? Irvin something. Schwinn, I think. Schiff. Irwin Schiff. Alright? And all I did all I did was I was like, let's check the comments, let's see what's going on. All right, and then where was it? Bingo, this one. Good, but missing info. All right. This guy is citing in his points a lot of stuff that we just went over, along with some definitions. All right. So like right here, he's saying Title 26 of the United States Code definition, or Section 7701. Section 7701 is the definition section for the entire title of the tax code. Okay, and the ninth one defines the United States as the District of Columbia and the several states. Oh, check that out. I was wrong. But at Section 7701, the next then definition 10. So the following definition, the term state is defined as the District of Columbia. Oh, check it out. I wasn't wrong. So that means definition 9, United States, is defined as District of Columbia and District of Columbia. Okay? And then there are a shit ton of other definitions here, and a lot of really just a lot of really good solid information. Considering this is a comment for a book, this is a lot of really solid information. Okay? And then down here, let's see. He also points out some stuff that Schiff didn't do. And then he gives some additional information. Search the web for Public Judicial Notice by William Cooper. Three-part. Let's see this. There are 3 parts of this document. Read them all. Very good info. Number 2, an investigation into the meaning of the term United States by unknown. Long and detailed document that is a must-read. And then suggest getting the book. Bingo. Goodbye, April 15th. That's where I learned about this book. That's where I got it from. Okay. That's just one example of why you should just read everything. Because I mean, like, the amount of information in that, I mean, like, it's really good, considering it's just a comment for a book. But anyway, that's where I got this. That's where I got this William Cooper article from. It's from. You can find it in supremelaw.org. All right. Great. I mean, like, all I do though. All right. You don't have to, like, I mean, like, that's a great site. Hold on to that site, because it is really good. All right, but I'm just typing, let's see, Puerto Rico Trust 62, okay? And then go ahead and put in, you know, Cooper if you want. But I just did, come on now. And then it's right there, third one, Supreme Law Library, the Cooper File. Great read. Pretty long though. Anyway, I think that's about that for the income tax right now. Unless you guys want me to go over something that I kind of brushed over, or something that you just kind of never really understood, or something along the lines of that. If not, then I'll just go into lawful money. So let me get my ish together. Alright, I will take your silence to mean that you are done with the income tax. That's the ratification doctrine in play. Being quiet is assenting. I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna read that Roman saying again, just because I like it so gosh darn much, and it's something you guys need to keep in mind all times. There's an old Roman saying that he who remains silent certainly does not speak. But nevertheless, it is true that he does not deny. And I would not be the least bit surprised if this is the reasoning behind all of the seemingly illegal tomfuckery that is going on. Is that no one is speaking up against it, therefore it's okay. Because you are not denying it. So, since you guys are not denying the progression of this chat, then it shall progress. Alright, so lawful money. What's going on there? Because some of it just doesn't make any gosh darn sense. Alright, so anyway, so the main thing with lawful money, the main question, the main concern with it, aside from it being something no one's ever heard of and originally confusing, is what happens when you actually cash a check. Okay, that is the issue. Because then it's, hey, so what do you get then? Do you actually get silver? Do you actually get lawful money? Are you actually getting silver certificates, silver bullion? What about gold? What about gold certificates? What are you getting when you're cashing that lawful money check, Ryan? What's going on? Ari, fill me in, dude. What are you getting, man? You're cashing these checks, then what? Well, then what? You still get the military script, okay? You still get all of this bullshit, alright? But it's okay, though. It's okay. Why is it okay? Because the remedy is still in place, alright? Lawful money, Title 12, United States Code, Section 411 is still in place. It is still something you can do. It is still the remedy to the Federal Reserve Act. It is just not as abrasive, I guess. It's not as overt. Overt's a much better word. It's not as overt as it once was before 1934 and before 1971. Yeah. It's not as overt. Why? We can make the typical assumptions. We can make the typical speculations as to big bad people keeping it on the hush-hush. But here's what's going on. At least to my understanding, okay? I shouldn't have said here's what's going on. Here's what I understand. Okay, here's how I see it. That's a much better way to say it. Here's how I see it. Okay? So there was lawful money, and then there was the Federal Reserve, okay? And then Federal Reserve notes could have been redeemable for US dollars, US currency, gold, silver, all of that stuff, okay? But because Federal Reserve notes were an elastic currency, they clearly did not have enough gold to cover the amount of Federal Reserve notes that were out there. And then, when the charter for the Federal Reserve was ending, okay, when the charter was shutting down, which was in 1933, that's a weird time, coincidence. 1933, the charter ran out because in 1913 the charter was established. Okay, also as a corporation, not a government entity. Anyway, so since the charter was running out, people who were holding the Federal Reserve notes were going to go redeem said notes for gold. Because the charter was out, alright, they came, they had their fun, they're leaving, let's get our gold back. Because this is not going to be around much longer. So as everyone was redeeming their Federal Reserve notes for gold, the banks were like, holy shit, we're fucked. And then there was the banker's emergency, No, the Bankers Holiday, and then some of the stuff from the the Act of 1917, the War Powers Act, something like that. I can't. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so some of that stuff was invoked, and the long and short of it was that Federal Reserve stuck around because people kept endorsing it, kind of because the people's balls went of ice. They didn't really have much of a choice, but they're endorsing it, so they're just sticking around. And then JFK signed Executive Order 111110, which was, I'll go ahead and read it because it's just one paragraph. It's still in force today. It's just not being enforced. It's not revoked, not repealed. It's not even amended. Come on now. So it's redirecting the sovereignty of printing, the printing power, which is the sovereignty of a nation. It's redirecting that back to the Treasury. We could speculate saying that's why he got assassinated. There is a book that suggests otherwise, and the amount of anomalies this guy lists in this book is pretty hard to ignore. But I would put my money on it being this executive order, because as history dictates, the money power that has been around since day one kills people who fuck with them. They killed Jesus. They killed Lincoln. They killed JFK. So, anyway, it's still in enactment, and my computer's not fucking working. So I'm not going to read it to you, but you get the idea. You can look it up. It's in the Federal Register. Anyway, so this is where it was directing the Treasury to start printing United States currency notes. Though you can find those in Title 31 of the United States Code, Section 1551. Okay? 1551, Title 31, United States Code. You'll see United States currency defined as a non-elastic currency, which fits the bill for lawful money, and that it's backed by silver in the Treasury. Actually, I don't know if it says that in there. It says that somewhere. I found it. I can't remember finding it anywhere. Anyway, and so that was set up in June 5th of 1963, or a little bit prior. Anyway, and then JFK was assassinated. Shortly thereafter, they stopped printing lawful money silver certificates. And then on February 21st, 1971, the Treasury stopped circulating these lawful money silver certificates, United States notes. So, they're not in circulation. You can't find them. If you cash a check, you're not going to get lawful money, kind of like to a certain extent. But the $100 bill is the easiest way to explain it. Because of it, the way it was written out. So here we go. Here's the $100 bill. All right. Now there's something that you all need to be aware of that makes a lot more sense. And I've gone over this. Aryav and I have gone over this in a couple posts prior. So if you want to read and look at some visualizations, then go back to our deconstructing the currency posts. Okay. and then you can see the illustrations, and it'll be a lot more clear there. Okay, so there's something called the four-corner rule in law, where it states that anything within its own four corners is its own document. Okay, so if you'll notice here, there are two fields. All right, two fields. There are two seals, and then let's see if we can. It's kind of blurry, but right here it says Federal Reserve Note, and right here it says United States of America. Then up here it says $100. All right, which would be U.S. dollars, not Federal Reserve notes. The right side of the bill is the Federal Reserve side, as indicated by Federal Reserve note and the seal. The left side is the United States note and the Treasury seal. Okay, and as you can see, Franklin's head is splitting the bill, not really in half, but it is splitting the bill because his head touches the border up here, and it is a part of the border down here. Okay, so that is really, they stopped circulating lawful money, but they rearranged the Federal Reserve note to include the United States note as well. So this side, the left side, is the United States note. Okay. Further evidence of this, beyond it saying $100 and then the United States of America, but also right here, this looks kind of like copper, and then this looks like gold. Okay, I don't really know if that is... Clearly it's not copper and gold, but it does appear to look that way. So these would indicate the different types of specie in which lawful money, I guess, could be redeemed. Well, it used to be redeemed. Now it's backed by these kinds of specie. Really, it's backed by silver in the Treasury, but the goal is that lawful money is backed by specie, which is what gives it its intrinsic value. Federal Reserve notes are not backed by nothing. Okay, they are backed by all of the goods and services of the United States. All right, so these, I mean, like in the Modern Money Mechanics pamphlet published by the Federal Reserve, they say that Federal Reserve notes have no intrinsic value. I think they say that because they can't be redeemed for anything. But if you go to the Federal Reserve website, it'll say that they're backed by the goods and services of the United States. Anyway, so lawful money is backed by specie, and it's indicated here with these two specie-like symbols, and also the difference in size would also indicate the difference in value of said specie. Okay, so that's why you get back Federal Reserve notes. And then you'll see the $5 bill is more or less the same. Okay. Now the $1 bill and the $2 bill are not. You can see how it is all one field. All right, you still have the two seals, but it's all one field. All right, and that's because you can have your four quarters pretty easily, which are still printed by the Treasury. So it's still, I guess, would be lawful money. All that being said, hopefully that'll clear the air, and it doesn't seem like there are too many people on here watching this. Thank you for everyone who is. But hopefully everyone else who's been asking that will sweat out the last however long it's been and watch that and figure it out. I'll probably have to go over it again, but you know, whatever. Alright, so now let's go on to Trust Fund 81, which is now repealed, but was once the Tennessee Valley Authority. Now, I did not get a whole lot of chance to research as much as I would have liked to today, which kind of pissed me off because it's my one-off day, but you know. Damn it! Fuck! My internet went down. Alright. It's no big deal. I'll be able to hopefully just like... Anyway, I'm not gonna fuck with this right now, but the gist of that, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and I'll have another live stream soon enough when I actually put some hours in and do some further research, but I'll just give a gist, and then we'll adjourn for a later time, because it's getting late, and it really needs to be its own. It really, I should have it in its own section, because this is really the new territory. Tonight has just been a review, and then everything with the Tennessee Valley Authority, and the New Deal, and the seizing of the gold, and usufruct. Private property, public property, equitable title, lawful title, and public bills. Yeah, public debts, so utility bills and shit like that. That should really have its own segment, but you guys have stuck it out with me. God bless you. So we'll go ahead and touch on it a little bit, and then it'll be review for you guys when I get back at it. But so, as some of you probably know, we are under martial law, General Order number 100, which is the Lieber Code. All right. Now, the Lieber Code has a usufruct clause. All right, and usufruct is exactly everything is prepaid. Well, it's discharged. It's not prepaid, it's discharged. I still don't know anything about secured creditors, but what I do know is that they took the gold in 33, they being the Gov. They took the gold in 1933. With that gold, they established the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a trust fund, and they taken the gold, made everything public, because under the international laws of war, Article 46 from the Geneva Convention in 1899. Yeah, 1947 would not have made any sense, because we're talking about the 30s. All right, 1899. It was actually, I think it was the Red Cross Convention. Anyway, Article 46, it might have been, International Laws of War, 1899. It was the Geneva Convention or Red Cross Convention. I don't remember right now, but it was Article 46, wherein it says that private property cannot be seized. Okay, and in the Lieber Code, I think it was Article 31 or 38. It says something along the lines of property, doesn't specify what kind, but property can be seized for the benefit of the military in the United States. All right, that would be Article 31, because Article 38 is the usufruct clause, and there has to be a usufruct to avoid that being theft, defrauding the public, and probably several other high crimes and war crimes, because then that would be like forced peonage, which is definitely a war crime. Oh, damn, 30 seconds remaining. Alright, so here's the gist. So they took all the gold, and then they created the Tennessee Valley Authority. Tennessee Valley Authority was used to create a whole bunch of electrical utilities, which are all public, and then your bill is discharged using your Social Security account. So writing on the face of that bill to discharge to said account ought to discharge the bill instead of you paying for it, and then the utility company can pay twice.